I found out I was expecting, and the thought of working from home to raise our child filled me with excitement. However, my husband accused me of prioritizing my biological child over his daughter. I'm a saleswoman, and I've always done quite well for myself. My husband and I have been married for 2 years, but we've been together for 5. This is my first marriage, while it's his second. He has an 8-year-old daughter from his previous relationship, and he has always had full custody of her. Our dating life was challenging because he was a full-time single dad, juggling long work hours, but we managed to make it work. After a year of dating, I met his daughter, who was 4 at the time. I really liked her, and I've always tried to be the best stepmother I could be. She calls me mom, and I've done everything a mother would do for her. I've helped her get dressed and ready for school, done her hair, cooked her meals, assisted her with homework and soccer practice, taken her out for ice cream, tucked her into bed, and read her stories. I know I'm not perfect and have made mistakes, but we've been a genuinely happy family. When my husband and I were engaged, he asked if I wanted to be a stay-at-home parent to Lizzie and any future children. At that time, I politely declined. I was thriving in my job and enjoyed going to work, so the idea of staying home all day with a child, doing nothing but cleaning and typical mom duties, didn't appeal to me. My fiancé was understanding, and we both expected that would be the case with any future children we might have. Fast forward to now, and I'm 6 months pregnant with our baby. I'm on cloud 9, filled with joy, and something within me has shifted. I started contemplating the idea of being a stay-at-home parent, and it didn't seem so dreadful anymore. I love my son and want to spend as much time with him as possible. I know it won't be all sunshine and rainbows, there will be plenty of diapers, drool, crying, and exhaustion, but I can't bear the thought of having only 2 weeks of maternity leave and then handing my child over to a stranger at daycare. I've been mulling this over for months, wanting to ensure it's something I genuinely desire rather than just wishful thinking. I discussed the pros and cons with my supervisor, and I'm at a point in my career where I can work from home full-time, stay with my son, and even pick up my stepdaughter from school. I wouldn't mind watching her and spending more time with her. The more I think about it, the more I want to give it a try. So, after putting little Lizzie to bed tonight, I asked my husband if we could talk and excitedly shared my idea. I was completely unprepared for his reaction. My husband was furious. He exploded, reminding me that we had promised I wouldn't be a stay-at-home parent before we got married, and now I was changing my mind. He accused me of being a bad stepmother, claiming that I clearly preferred our son over Lizzie and that my favoritism was disgusting and obvious. He insisted that I shouldn't be allowed to stay home with our son until his daughter could share that experience with me. For the record, Lizzie is incredibly excited about her little brother and can't wait for him to arrive. She has never shown any signs of anxiety, grief, or jealousy toward him or me. I was shocked and heartbroken. My husband chose to sleep on the couch, and I found myself crying in our room. I felt deeply hurt by what he said. I know I'm not perfect, but I've done my best for Lizzie. I never imagined I would change my mind about becoming a stay-at-home mom, but now I genuinely want to do so, and I wouldn't have to give up my job, which is a double win. His words affected me profoundly, and to be honest, I was angry about his accusations. I love Lizzie just as much as I love the baby. While I admit that I feel a stronger connection to this baby, likely due to my experience with pregnancy, it doesn't mean I love Lizzie any less. It's just different. Is it really so wrong? Am I truly a terrible stepmother? I hadn't planned on changing my mind again. I intend to keep my career, and I don't mind taking extra care of Lizzie alongside the baby. In fact, I believe it could be an opportunity for us to bond and connect over the new addition to our family. I'm not sure how to approach my husband. I tried to explain everything I've mentioned here, including my desire to spend more time with Lizzie and grow closer to her, but all he did was yell louder and hurl more hurtful things about my parenting. I had a challenging start in life, and I believe it's irrational to intentionally limit your own child's opportunities in the name of fairness. That kind of thinking is just poor parenting. The fact that my husband wanted to impose this on me and our son flipped a switch inside me. I stood up quietly and told him that I was leaving. I made it clear that he had crossed a line and that I needed some space from him. I refused to subject any of my children to such an abusive and controlling environment. I suggested that once things calmed down, we could consider marriage counseling because it was evident he had deep-seated issues that needed to be addressed. He became upset and started crying, pleading, "You can't leave. We have a family. You can't take my son." I was taken aback by his reaction. I responded, "For once, you will take Lizzie to school, and I will leave." I then went into our room and began packing my things. He stormed in, throwing my clothes out of the bag while shouting at me. I was genuinely scared. I had never seen him like this before. I warned him, "If you try to stop me from leaving or lay a hand on me, I will call the police." I also told him I was calling my mother to come get me. Maybe this was an overreaction, but I was terrified. All I wanted was to get myself and my son away from him. He burst into tears and walked away. I called my mother and told her I needed her to come immediately. I explained that I didn't feel safe and needed to stay with her for a while. I packed what I could as quickly as possible, and when my mother arrived, I left. I've been with her for about 5 days now, and I feel numb. I can't believe how quickly everything spiraled out of control. My family and marriage were turned upside down in just a few days. I wish I had never brought up the idea of being a stay-at-home parent. If I hadn't, none of this would have happened. While I was in North Carolina for a few days, my husband began messaging and calling me on the third day, saying that Lizzie had been crying for me and missing me. I've determined that Lizzie is safe. I know my husband would never mistreat her. I spoke to her yesterday to make sure she was eating, attending school, and completing her homework. She was crying and asking when I would be back, and I didn't know how to respond. I told her I didn't know but that I loved her very much. I urged my husband not to use Lizzie as a pawn to manipulate me into returning because that wouldn't work. He genuinely claimed that I was proving to be a bad stepmother by not returning and being there for her. I told him that if I was so terrible, he shouldn't want me back and should not contact me again until he was ready to go to counseling. I made it clear that I wanted Lizzie left out of our issues. I stated that if Lizzie was mentioned in any text or email, I would delete it without reading the rest. I established a rule that any phone call in which he attempted to bring her up, outside of ensuring she was safe and cared for, would result in me hanging up immediately. I told him I didn't want to talk to him right now and that he needed to figure out what he wanted because I was prepared to file for divorce if he didn't get it together soon. My husband began crying again, but I simply hung up because I was too exhausted to deal with any more of it that day. Since then, he has remained silent, except for a text I received today stating that he wants me back and misses me. Honestly, I don't know where to go from here. I'm still trying to process everything, and writing it down helps. I reiterated that I had the right to change my mind and that I wouldn't just hand my son over to a stranger while sitting at work, worrying about him all day. I expressed my willingness to do more for Lizzie, including taking her to the zoo and museums with the baby, participating in PTA meetings, and attending all her sporting events so she and her brother could support each other. I reminded him that this was a good approach for all the kids and that his distorted sense of fairness, wanting to deny our children a nurturing home simply because Lizzie's birth mother had failed her, was incorrect. I informed him that taking away opportunities for our children wouldn't alleviate his guilt. I even stated that I was willing to work through this, seek counseling, and consult child psychologists or other professionals to obtain an unbiased opinion on what was best for our family. But he grew furious again, screaming that I was returning to work 2 weeks after giving birth, and that ended the conversation. He claimed I had my chance to be a stay-at-home parent, and because I didn't take it. I warned him, "If you try to stop me from leaving or lay a hand on me, I will call the police." I also told him I was calling my mother to come get me. Maybe this was an overreaction, but I was terrified. All I wanted was to get myself and my son away from him. He burst into tears and walked away. I contacted my mother and told her she needed to come immediately. I explained that I didn't feel comfortable and needed to stay with her for a while. I packed what I could as quickly as possible, and when my mother arrived, I left. I've been with her for about 5 days now, and I feel numb. I can't believe how quickly everything escalated. My family and marriage were turned upside down in just a few days. I wish I had never mentioned the idea of being a stay-at-home parent. If I hadn't, none of this would have happened. My husband and I were in North Carolina for a few days when he began messaging and calling me on the third day, saying that Lizzie had been crying for me and missing me. I know Lizzie is safe. I trust that my husband would never mistreat her. I spoke to her yesterday to ensure she was eating, attending school, and completing her homework. She was crying and asking when I would be back, and I didn't know how to respond. I told her I didn't know but that I loved her very much. I urged my husband not to use Lizzie as a pawn to manipulate me into returning because that wouldn't work. He genuinely claimed that I was proving to be a bad stepmother by not returning and being there for her. I told him that if I was so terrible, he shouldn't want me back and should not contact me again until he was ready to go to counseling. I made it clear that I wanted Lizzie left out of our issues. I stated that if Lizzie was mentioned in any text or email, I would delete it without reading the rest. I established a rule that any phone call in which he attempted to bring her up, outside of ensuring she was safe and cared for, would result in me hanging up immediately. I told him I didn't want to talk to him right now and that he needed to figure out what he wanted because I was prepared to file for divorce if he didn't get it together soon. My husband began crying again, but I simply hung up because I was too exhausted to deal with any more of it that day. Since then, he has remained silent, except for a text I received today stating that he wants me back and misses me. Honestly, I don't know where to go from here. I'm still trying to process everything, and writing it down helps. I had never offended him and was not his ex-wife, so why was he making me suffer for what she had done to him? It boiled down to my husband's fear that I would become like his ex, that I would prioritize our son above Lizzie and that I would stop loving her. The therapist addressed the distinction between his kids and our kids. She emphasized that my husband needs to understand that it is natural to feel more connected and attached to biological children than to stepchildren. She reminded him that while Lizzie and our son were his children, that was not the case for me, which was not only natural and expected but also acceptable. She asked him if I had not been loving and kind to Lizzie, if I had not cared for her, and if I had not gone out of my way to sacrifice for her as any parent would. My husband responded reluctantly but positively to all of her questions. The therapist told me that there was nothing wrong with having feelings or changing my mind, as long as I continued to love, respect, and treat Lizzie with care. She pointed out that while my husband might be offended because Lizzie is also his biological child, it was unfair for him to expect me to feel the same love and connection to her that he did. In reality, she argued, it was impossible because I hadn't carried her, given birth to her, or breastfed her, and she hadn't entered my life until she was a young girl. The therapist highlighted that there are several types of love and that my special bond with the baby, as well as my desire to stay at home and nest, were not only natural but also did not imply that I had lost my love for Lizzie. It wasn't about loving her less or being unjust, it was just different. She stated that one of the most common mistakes biological parents make with stepparents is guilting or shaming them about their feelings for stepchildren versus biological children, insisting that love must be the same. She admitted that while this instinct is normal and protective, it is often the biological parent who causes friction and strain if not handled properly. Both the stepparent and stepchild may feel inferior in some circumstances. Lizzie was old enough to understand that I wasn't her biological mother and that I had entered her life when she was no longer a baby or toddler. Even young children can grasp that babies require more care than preschoolers, especially if it's explained to them properly. In short, the therapist emphasized that my eagerness to spend time with Lizzie, my desire for her to be part of the baby's life, and my active role in her life were all very positive signs. She stated that we were doing significantly better than many other stepfamilies in similar situations. Unfortunately, my husband struggled to accept this. We tried more family outings and therapy sessions, but he began to withdraw, claiming he felt ganged up on and that no one was on his side. He couldn't understand why I would want to stay home to care for a baby. When I asked him directly if he wanted the baby, he sounded surprised and said, "Of course I do," but added that he just wanted to ensure his daughter received what was promised to her. Ultimately, he refused to compromise. I found it blatantly unfair and harsh to insist that our son be placed in daycare or assigned to a nanny or au pair, all in the name of fairness. Both his therapist and I stressed that fairness does not always mean equality, but he refused to listen. It was as if he didn't want to acknowledge that my role as a stay-at-home parent would benefit his daughter as well. I believe my husband expected me to cave, but all it did was diminish my love and affection for him, especially after he finished therapy. I told him that if he continued to insist on getting his way, I would file for formal separation. He probably thought I was bluffing, but when nothing changed, I went directly to an attorney's office. He was completely taken aback when I served him with the papers. I set up a semi-formal custody agreement, stating that I would continue working from home while living with my parents. When I go into labor, my husband is not permitted to enter the birthing room, he must remain in the waiting room. He can see and hold our son, but only while I am present and someone else is overseeing. I insisted on this because, to be honest, I am terrified of him and do not trust him. My husband is overwhelmed with shock and grief. His family is furious with him and fully supports me, although they are understandably concerned about the entire situation. I've told all of his relatives that they are welcome to attend the birth and hold the baby. In fact, I want them there to observe my husband with the baby and ensure he doesn't do anything harmful. He constantly texts, calls, and emails me, saying he can't believe I am doing this. He begs, "Why can't you listen to me and understand me? Please come back and be a family again," among other things. I've told him that he needs to return to therapy and that I need to be able to trust him with our son. That trust will only come when I see a shift in his attitude toward both our son and Lizzie. I need to feel like a wife to him, not just a mother to Lizzie. I truly love Lizzie, and every day I cry because I feel like I've lost her. But I didn't marry my husband to become her mother, I married him because I loved him and wanted to spend my life with him. I knew being a stepmother was part of the deal, but it wasn't the only reason I married him. Lizzie calls me frequently, and I talk to her. I've seen her a couple of times since the upheaval, but her father is not allowed to discuss her with me because I believe he is manipulative. However, I also don't want to completely remove Lizzie from my life. I love that girl dearly and have shed many tears for her during this difficult time. I tell Lizzie how much I love her, that none of this is her fault, and that I am doing everything I can to make things work. I reassure her that I still want her to be a part of both my life and her brother's life, and I tell her that she is the best bonus daughter and sister in the world. My husband's family has informed me that Lizzie is having difficulty adjusting to our separation. She has even cried to her father, saying, "You made both of my mommies leave." I was scared Lizzie would hate me for this, yet the exact opposite has happened. Her grades are slipping, she is miserable, she constantly cries, and she has become quite disrespectful to her father. I begged my husband to get her into counseling, and he eventually did, which is helping her. The guilt I feel is enormous and crushing. I feel as if I have single-handedly destroyed my family, but deep down, I know I'm making the right choice by standing firm on my boundaries, insisting on being